if your breakdown was really a breakthrough and your soul was just waiting for you to listen. On today's Soul Sparks with your host Saima, we are joined by the powerful and intuitive Catherine Crestani, leadership coach, author, speaker, and founder of Fellow Healing. From building a six-figure business to walking away from it all during a health and life crisis, Catherine now helps women, especially mothers, reclaim their voice through self leadership and soul aligned action. So, this episode is all about the magic that unfolds when you lead from within. Catherine, welcome to the show. So, Catherine, like your journey, it took a radical turn when you left behind everything successful, to follow your intuition. So I'm really eager to know that what did that inner voice sound like and how did you learn to trust it?
Yeah, so I've always been a person that's trusted my gut instincts. So from
Mhm.
very early on in my life, I would always trust my gut. And people would say you can't build a business on your gut instincts or you can't follow your gut instincts. Well, it turns out you can, because I quite successfully built my allied health company. So as the first one I built with a business partner, and then it just didn't feel right anymore. Our relationship wasn't great and I stepped out of that. But in the meantime, I'd already started my own company. And I built this company up from the ground all the way up to having, I think, 8 staff members working for me. We were booked out, 6 days a week. And it was consuming me. So it was just like 24/7. I was working. I would wake up in the middle of the night to send emails because I learned about the beautiful delay send function, and it was a good way to hide my insomnia from the world. But amidst all of that, I never felt fulfilled. So I always felt like there was something bigger I was meant for. And I was never truly happy doing what I was doing, whether it was running the business or working as a speech language pathologist. There was never part of me that felt fulfilled. And that curiosity led me to finding a spiritual mentor. And through that, I went through, I like to call it a reawakening because it was simply remembering all the things I had forgotten. And
Mm-hmm.
amidst all of that, my company started to fall apart. So there's a thing in the spiritual community called the dark night of the soul. And it's not a dark night, it's many, many nights. And I called it round one, round two, round three. But they're things that we have to let go of and go through in order to step into who we're truly meant to be from a soul aligned purpose. So my soul, the dark night of the soul involved my company starting to fall apart. So in the space of a week, I had 3 staff resign. And in Australia, finding allied health staff, especially speech language pathologists, is incredibly difficult. So I was there trying to pull back because my health at this point wasn't okay. And I was on a on the floor in a ball crying because I was like, what is going on? This isn't right. And as I continued to move through that, I eventually got off the floor. I remember my guides, my husband, and my son were just there going, you can get up and keep going. It's okay. But I was like, how am I meant to find all these staff? And then a month later, another 3 resigned. And this point, I was really angry at the universe. I remember going out to this rock where I meditate and I was yelling, like I was so angry. And then a month later, another 3 resigned. But by that point, I went, okay, this isn't for me anymore. They're not meant to be in my life anymore, and I need to sell this company. So I started that process and I got sent a beautiful person to buy the company. And then when I did that, I was like, yeah, I'm free. And then I was faced with living paycheck to paycheck because I had to face my own worth story because I believe if you didn't work hard, you couldn't have money and that rich people were bad. So I subconsciously spent all the money on various things. Like we weren't living, going out and buying $400 meals or anything like that. But it just slowly trickled away to the point then we were living paycheck to paycheck again. And I knew there was something more I was missing. And I was there trying to start my business of being a coach. And I wasn't attracting people because I didn't feel I was worthy. So as I started to unpack that, and actually believe in myself again and find my worth again, Then I started attracting clients. I started attracting money and abundance, and all these beautiful shifts happened. And most recently, I was still working as a speech language pathologist for the person who bought my company. And just last week, I had finished up my job because my soul told me it was time to quit. And I have no idea where the constant income is going to come from as my coaching business is still building and getting stronger and stronger. But at the same time, I knew I had to follow my intuition, and then opportunities have started to come into my life. And it was only because I created space for them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Catherine, thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing that. And it's so like striking that how your inner voice didn't sound like noise or fear, but like something more deeper and more grounded. And I think like a lot of people like wrestle with whether they're hearing intuition or just discomfort.
Well, it's always meant to challenge us, Seema, because if our soul just stayed comfortable all the time, it would never evolve and change. And sometimes the biggest thing you can do is learn how to be courageous. And courageous isn't something you have, it's something you actually learn to be. And it's about being brave and taking that courageous step, and that trusting that inner voice, it's so rewarding. And people will tell you you're crazy. People will tell you, like, oh, how do you even know that? And you'll get that pushback, but you just know at a soul level, in your heart, you're like, no, this feels right. This feels like the path I am on. And it's really having the courage and conviction to carry on anyway, despite everyone else telling you all those outside things, because that is the noise. The voice coming from inside you knows you the best and will know things that even you don't understand.
Absolutely, that completely makes sense. So, what's your advice for those who hear their intuition but are scared to act on it?
Yeah, so I usually advise to start with small things to learn to trust it. So I teach my clients a thing called muscle testing. If anyone heads over to my website, in the free resources, there's a thing called muscle testing 101. That basically it's using this process from kinesiology to learn how to trust your own intuition by muscle testing on yourself. And there'll be no evidence showing that this works, because how do you have a placebo for that? But at the same time, it's a tool that you can use to help trust. Other people might use a pendulum, if people have heard people using pendulums, but it's just a way to connect in with the energy of yourself. So I say to trust with questions that don't have any significance. So it might be, what should I eat today? What should I wear today? And you can test it straight away and say, hey, is my name Catherine? Am I a female? Am I allowed to drink wine today? Can I have some chocolate? And you start to learn to trust it that way by getting these yeses and nos, or congruent and incongruent, and see what your soul has to share with you. And if you're one of those people that go to a cafe and you take forever to order because you can't narrow down your choices, this is a method you should really learn, because it will help you free yourself up from that decision. And sometimes you'll order something and you would never order it normally, and then you eat it and it is so perfect for your body and your soul. And it's just that magic that happens. Like, I call it a foodgasm, because you eat it and you're like, oh my goodness, this is everything I need and this is everything I want. And it's through those little tasks, like, hey, should I wear this top or this top? Or hey, should I eat this or this? That you can learn to start to trust that inner voice, because one day you don't even have to do the muscle testing. You'll just hear the answer or see the answer or feel the answers, whatever comes through, whatever pathways right for you. And what it does as well, Seema, is it opens up space, because you're not spending all this time on trivial decisions that don't impact your life, but you don't use it for emotional decisions. So you don't use it to go, should I quit my job? Should I sell my house? Should I break up with my partner?
Mm.
That's not what you use this for. This is to start to learn that trust first off. And then once you can start to trust that inner voice that's coming through, and you can distinguish it from your ego, which is the voice that's normally got all the doubts and that fun stuff, then you can start to make bigger choices based on what you're feeling. And the Heart Map Institute is so amazing, because they're putting this all into evidence. And we've been so conditioned to trust and follow what our logic says, but that's actually the last place you should check in with. Like, when you're making a decision, you should check in with your heart, your gut, and then your mind, because your heart actually has more decision-making receptors than your brain. The same with your gut. So if we actually learn to check in with our heart first, then check in with our gut, because our gut keeps us safe. Our gut goes, yeah, this is safe, this isn't safe. And then we check in with our head, we're going to have a very different looking society, because we're going to have people who are heart led rather than
Mm.
people who are logic driven, which doesn't always get you where you need to go.
That really hits home, Catherine. It's like we wait for the fear to disappear before we move. But sometimes the movement is what softens the fear, and the fear of leaving comfort for calling is so real, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And don't get me wrong, like when I quit my job, I was scared, but at the same time, when my soul had that message for me, it was so clear, Samo. It just came up and said,
Mhm.
quit. And there was no fighting it. There was no argument with it. And I knew if I didn't quit, that I would, keep numbing myself, because that's what we do. We'll numb ourselves to what our heart wants, or we'll turn the voice down that we don't want to listen to because it's scary. And if you keep doing that, it ends up as dis-ease in your body. And for me, I was actually going numb. So I was actually getting numbness in my face and my hand. And 2 weeks after I put a date on me quitting my job, the numbness went away. So, often our body's there telling us when something is in alignment as well. So if you're curious and you're thinking, I don't know how to listen to my inner voice, check in with your body and see what is hurting all the time. Is it your right shoulder constantly in pain, but you've done nothing to it? And Google is now so quick at giving us the answers. If you just search spiritual meaning of right shoulder pain, it will give you a clue as to what is happening in your body, that it's trying to let you know, and give you those clues to start to follow your intuition and see what's happening at a deeper level.
That's gonna surely help all our listeners out there. Now, Catherine, you help mothers lead from the inside out, which is really remarkable. So, how can mothers, begin to reclaim their identity without guilt?
Oh, it's tricky. I'm not gonna lie. Um, but I guess the biggest thing is, if we don't fill up our cups and let that overflow fill up everyone else around us, we get depleted a lot quicker, and we can't show up as the best versions of ourselves. And as a mum and working with children for nearly 20 years, and then also working with their parents, the biggest thing I would have to tell parents is to go look after themselves, because a lot of parents, and I can so resonate with this because I am guilty of doing this too, we put our child's needs before our own. But then what happens when we get unwell? Then who's going to look after the child? Who's going to hold the shit down? Yeah, exactly. And, if we don't look after ourselves, then what example are we teaching our children as well? If we're constantly putting our needs to the side, we're not showing them how important it is to respect your own boundaries and to respect your own love that you have for yourself. And there's this big self-care movement, but it shouldn't be a self-care movement. It should just be, this is what I can do to honor myself today. So for me, I get up an hour before my son normally does. So I get up normally 5 a.m. most days, and people like would be going, what? And when I first heard about this, I did the same thing. I'm like, this person doesn't have children. They have no idea. I have a child, so I'm talking from experience here. But the biggest thing was when I started doing that, I had time to get up and I did, some yoga. I did meditation. I spent time on myself. I made myself a tea, and it allowed me to have this space for me to just set into my body and create space for me. And I find that really important. And everyone has their own method of doing that. You might wake up and you might just really want to have a cup of coffee while watching the sun come up or something like that. But basically, it's just having that quiet time for yourself. And I've met so many mums who have 3 or 4 children, and they're burning out. And the reason they're burning out is because they don't have any of that time to themselves. They don't have time to sit there. And I'm not talking about sitting there and watching Netflix or things like that. I'm talking about actually doing something that honors yourself in some way. So whether it's a movement practice, whether it's meditation. And if you're a person listening who's like, oh, I can't meditate, find somewhere that you find silence. So it might be staring at a tree, it might be in the garden, it might be anything like that, because meditation is essentially finding that place where there's silence and you can find that inner peace. So if you can create that for yourself every day, you're a different human. And I mean that because some mornings where I have been exhausted and listened to my body and knew I needed the extra sleep, I was worth having that extra sleep, but at the same time, I was really grumpy because I didn't get that hour to myself.
I love how you frame that, Catherine, especially the idea that reclaiming identity isn't selfish, it's essential. And like for all the mom listening right now who feels like she's lost herself in the noise, that's a simple place to start.
Yeah. And I guess the biggest thing too, my coach taught us to not think of it as being selfish, but rather self-full, because you're
Mhm.
filling yourself up, because it's when you are truly in your element and when you're truly able to be your authentic self, then you can be present with your child. And that's the greatest gift we can often give them is our presence, being fully in tune with what they have to share and spending that quality time with them rather than being distracted and having 100 things on our minds because we haven't had that chance to find that peace and stillness for ourselves in the day.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Now, how did your spiritual journey evolve during your health crisis, and how do you now support others in healing their own like word story?
Yeah, thank you, Seema. So,
Mhm.
whilst I was running the company, I was suffering from burnout, chronic stress, adrenal fatigue, anxiety, panic attacks. I was definitely having panic attacks. And it was when I stepped away from that, then I had to do a lot of healing, and it wasn't quick. So I was slowly, like when I was in that peak of running my company, I was seeing my naturopath nearly every week and walking away with a box of supplements, basically to keep me alive because I was not thriving. I was surviving. And, it was only at the start of this year that I went back to see him and he said, okay, you don't actually need any of this anymore. And I was like, excuse me? He goes, no, you're okay. Like, keep doing what you're doing. And but it took a lot of unpacking and a lot of healing and a lot of tapping into like we were sharing earlier, my own worth story, because so much of me didn't believe I was worthy of greatness. And we all are. We all have this beautiful, unique story, which is what makes us unique, which is what makes us have something special to share with the world. And it doesn't matter if you're a coach and there's 100 other coaches. How you coach will be unique because you've had a different life experience to the next coach that you meet, and you have a different set of skills to the next person that you meet. And as I explored and started to unpack my health, that caused me to start to look into what ways can I do healing on myself and also other people. So I learned about medical intuitive work because I could always feel other people's pain. And learning that was really impactful, Seema, because all of a sudden I understood that some of the things happening in my body actually weren't mine. So that was really powerful learning. Oh, this isn't mine. I can just discharge that and give it back. So thank you very much. And yeah, you have that back. I don't want that. But then also I always tap into theta healing, which is a process where you go directly up to God and ask for healing, which was really, really powerful. And just a lot of intuitive practices would come. And the more I practiced, the more I meditated and connected with my spirit guides and different dimensions and things like that, the more I just felt more at home, but also the more trusting I became of the information I received, because sometimes the universe will do things to prove it. So for me, like one example is I got re-gifted in a breathwork session. I went into a past life regression and I was re-gifted the ability to work with DNA in the quantum realm. And I was like, oh, what is this? This is amazing. And my husband was my guinea pig, and I started working on him because he was incredibly unwell. So through all this, we're going through this like paycheck to paycheck, and then he's unwell. So we're putting extra money into recovering his health as well. And the person that he was working with had a Rife machine. So a Rife machine measures the frequencies in our body, and it lets us know what's not in alignment. And she came back to me and she said, hey, he's got these issues. see if you can work on them. And I was like, okay. So I did. And I used this DNA thing that I got given, and I was doing all this magic with it. That's the only way I can describe it. And when I said, okay, this is what I did, and I wrote back to her, and she's like, I don't know what effing magic you just did, but she's like, you fix this, you decrease this, blah, 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 blah. And I don't usually get that justification. And especially when you're working with spirituality. So in that regard, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And this is something. And then what I realized working on this more was I could help and empower my clients because I could see what was impacting. Our DNA is designed to self-heal. We've just forgotten that. So often there are energies and patterns that are stopping us from stepping into that pattern. And there's a study called epigenetics, and epigenetics is the environmental things and the cultural beliefs and all these sorts of things actually impact our DNA expression. And there's so much evidence on this now. And DNA is energy. Every connection has an energetic connection. So if you're an energy worker, there's no reason why you can't work with the DNA. And as I started to step more into this, I realized I could actually help mothers, especially, come back to themselves and start to release those beliefs, just like I started releasing them in myself. And I became friends, and I teach my clients as well to become friends with your triggers, your flaws, and your wounds because they never fully go away. But how you manage them can change and shift who you are dramatically. So when I was writing my book, I was coming up to the point where I was ready to submit it. And all I had to do was write a synopsis. And the old thing of the low self-worth and the self-doubt and the self-sabotage, it came up, and it took me a good half a day to work through it. And then the next time I went to do it, it wasn't as bad because you learn, okay, these are my triggers, these are my flaws. Hello, old friend. This is part of me. I'm going to embrace you, but I'm not letting you going to control me. I'm actually going to have the courage to keep moving forward, even though all these things are coming up again. And people often talk about mindset and neuro-linguistic programming and that sort of thing. But your energy is 80% of what helps you move forward, and your mindset is 20%. So if you can, combine the energy work and the strategy/mindset, then you can really move forward in life and make significant changes. Whereas if you're only working on your mindset and every time a negative thought comes up, you're there counteracting it or whatever you do to try and negate that, you're actually not befriending what's happening and you're not understanding the energy behind it, and you're not asking those questions as to, why am I thinking this and what is it teaching me? Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible, Catherine. How a health crisis can strip everything down to the raw truth of who we are, and that's so moving, especially the way you connected healing to rewriting the word story.
Exactly. And I feel like everyone has a different healing journey, and it
Hmm.
depends how you're meant to then share that with the world, right? Like, Sammy, you probably have a completely different story to me, and that's what makes us all unique and makes us all special. And it's through those trials and tribulations that we go through that is what builds us and allows our soul to evolve. And I've met people who will have a perfect life until it's not anymore, and that's just life, and that's okay. And it's the choices that we make, because life always comes down to choices, but it's our choices that define us and help shape our soul and who we want to be. So the more you learn to trust your soul, the more you learn to connect in with your soul, the better that you will learn to trust and build a soul aligned life. And in turn, if you want to, a soul aligned business.
This is the heart of it all. Catherine Crestani, you showed us that the most powerful path we can take is the one inward, toward our truth, our voice, and our soul's vision. Whether you're a mother, entrepreneur, or just someone standing in the age of transformation, your spark is still there. So trust the whisper, lead with love, and let your soul build the life you were meant for.